Lions general manager Bob Quinn said Wednesday that he was disappointed former Oklahoma running back Joe Mixon was not invited to the NFL Combine because he would have liked for all of the teams to be able to evaluate him. Mixon was one of a handful of players not invited to the Combine after punching a woman in Norman, Oklahoma back in 2014. Here's Quinn.
Yeah, we're going to leave the door open on Joe. I think it's really disappointing that Joe's not here. I think it's, we come here to see the best college football players, and for him not being here because of those issues, personally, I don't think that's real fair because we have a lot of investigation that we want to do on him, and to get him in one spot for all the teams would have been great. But I think it is a disappointment that guys like him, and there's a few others you can put in that category, that, we're going to be chasing around on the month of March and April, and it's really unfair to the players, to be honest with you. So the door's open, and I'd like to, be able to get a chance to sit down with the people that know Joe and kind of see what the circumstances were around the incident.
So Quinn looks at it as a disappointment and unfair to the players, also saying that Mixon is still on Detroit's draft board, but that it would be a long conversation before he felt comfortable about drafting the running back. Will Kane is back with us. Good to see you again. Stephen A., should Mixon have been invited to the Combine?
Absolutely. And I think it was entirely hypocritical of the NFL not to have him there. Clearly, by not having him there, what you're trying to do is hurt his draft status. My point is, okay, I have no problem with that. Then why not just ban him from the league for a year? Why not just do that? If he's going to be allowed to be on an NFL roster, then why not give teams the opportunity to interview him, probe, talk to him, find out even more about what you're finding out about, and put him through the same intensive evaluation process that you would put anybody else through that has an opportunity eventually to play in an NFL uniform, rather than prohibit that activity, thereby trying to hurt him by saying he's not invited here, he may not be somebody that you want, and trying to sully him in that fashion. I'm not trying to come to the defense of Joe Mixon in any way. What I'm simply saying is that make a call, make a decision. Are you going to allow him in the NFL or are you not? And if you're going to allow him into the NFL, which they're clearly going to do because he's going to be allowed to be drafted, then why don't you put him through the same scrutiny that you would subject anybody else to that has to show up at the NFL scouting combine? We all know the history of the combine. We know how invasive and probing that they can be. So the point is, if you've got executives saying, if this is somebody that we're allowed to consider bringing on board, why isn't he here to be evaluated like anybody else? That is in the interest of fairness. I don't think it's about being fair to Joe Mixon. I think it's more flagrant about the hypocrisy of the NFL, who wants to come across as if they're making a decision when, in fact, they're really not. They're just coming across as flaming hypocrites. Make the call, bring him, allow him in, or don't. But don't dance around the issue like I believe they're doing.
And there's also a larger philosophical point here about American life. And, Will, you've discussed this in the past. What kind of behavior, or should someone be permanently disqualified, in this case, not only for employment, but for consideration for employment? It doesn't make sense to me that if he is allowed to play, that he wouldn't be brought in to be physically evaluated like everyone else. Now, once you have that physical evaluation, that will go into the mix with the evaluation of other components of Mixon, including his behavior at that restaurant. And when that's all put together, teams may well decide to pass. But it doesn't make, along the lines of your reasoning, Stephen A., to me, a lot of sense to permanently prohibit someone from employment or even consideration for employment. And then if you decide not to do that, simply not evaluate them in a certain category. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Oh, I think you guys have set up a false choice. I don't think our choices are either permanent ban or full embrace, or permanent ban or lack of full investigation. We can strike it down the middle here. And it's interesting, at the very least, to point out that we've had sort of a role reversal on some of our previous debates. Clearly, based upon prior debates, I think it would be entirely inappropriate to ban someone from the ability to earn employment at their special talents because of past indiscretions. I believe in second chances. I do think there's a threshold on that. I think when second turns into third and fourth and fifth and sixth, it expires at some point. But in the interest of nothing else, maybe simply morally, but even more reintegrating people into society, we want to give more chances. However, that doesn't mean we have to bend over backwards at every step to help them along the way. We don't have to accommodate. So in other words, you always hear the argument, this is a privilege. Playing in the NFL is a privilege. XYZ is a privilege. And some of that I take an issue with. I don't think employment is a privilege. I don't think pursuing your way as a productive member of society is a privilege. But I do think being invited to essentially what is a job fair is a privilege. Now, Stephen A., you point out, which I think is important, the Combine is a chance for serious investigation. Let's find out if Joe Mixon is a worthy individual, worthy of investment. Well, I would say to you, no NFL team is precluded from that. If they're really interested in Joe Mixon, they can go on their own to his pro day. They can go sit down with him personally. And in fact, any team that's really willing to weigh the pluses and minuses of Joe Mixon should show that level of investment. They should go meet with him. I don't think they should in any way think they should be disappointed, as the Lions GM said, that he's not there and made it easy for them. The point in the end is this. We can strike a middle course. It can be nuanced. It doesn't have to be you're all the way in or you're all the way out. Yes, Joe Mixon should be able to be an NFL player, but he didn't have to be invited to every job fair on his way to that employment.
Well, the way I disagree
No,
with
but
you,
his physical talent. Go ahead, Steve.
Where I disagree with you, Will, is this. That, by what we heard from Bob Quinn, the Lions general manager, you're essentially hurting the teams, per se, for the actions of a Joe Mixon. Because, yes, like you just said, they could step out and evaluate him. But it would take extra work. It would take, and they should, and it would take extra work on their part. What they're saying is, why should we have to go through this? What are you trying to do to him? You either want him in the league or you don't. And if you do want him in the league, any prospective draft pick, Will, is invited to the NFL scouting combine. Why would you prohibit him from coming? That's the whole point.
Mixon's physical,
it's your
Mixon's
rule.
physical abilities.
It's what they do. It's not mixed. We're not asking for an exception here. It's what the NFL does.
I would argue
so why compromise
Mixon's physical abilities suggest he should be there. It is as you said, Will, a job fair. He is not being paid to be there. And in fact, it's an information gathering process. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why exclude him from that when that information you gather there, which really makes it easier for the teams, will be put in the mix with other information, including his behavior in the restaurant, and teams may well pass after that.
Well, first of all, any team that's unwilling, who finds it too hard to go visit Joe Mixon personally, to invest in that level of investigation, probably shouldn't be drafting him anyway. So I don't buy this whole thing about it's hurting the team.
The issue.
I don't want a team that wants to casually run him through a combine interview to be the one that drafts him. If you want to take on Joe Mixon, show that you're willing to investigate fully what it is to draft Joe Mixon.
But you want them to devote more resources?
Yes.
You think because of his bad behavior, teams should devote more resources to checking him out?
Is he not a higher risk?
Why put the burden on the teams?
Is he not a higher risk?
Maybe, but why put the burden on the teams?
Because they're the ones that are going to be employing him. If you take on a higher risk, show the willingness to invest further.
You don't know if you want to. If he doesn't work out, he may not be worth it.
I disagree with you, Will, but I totally understand where you're coming from. You're saying if you want Joe Mixon, we're going to make you work harder in order to probe him, investigate him, and ultimately acquire him. We're not going to make it easier. I'm saying that's still wrong for the NFL to do because it reeks of hypocrisy.
They have a rule.
Yeah, Stephen, I have a lot of issues with the NFL on this one in terms of the inconsistency, but I will save that for tomorrow. Coming up next, a member of Jerry Jones' own family is saying he's not trustworthy. We'll tell you exactly what they said. Plus, Colin Kaepernick was at the center of controversy last season as he decided not to stand up for the national anthem before games. What does he plan to do this season? We'll get into that next.
Embrace mine like a crooked two. 4 takes, that's you. 3 takes, not me. 2 takes if you lucky. First take, stop me. 4 takes, that's you. 3 takes, not me. 2 takes if you lucky. First take, you got me.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Molly Karam here in Bristol. Your boys, Stephen A. and Mash. There they are. Coming to us from New York. Hi, guys. How we feeling?
What's up? What's up?
What on, Molly?
What's up?
We had a game last night, gentlemen. You want to get into it?
Quite a game.
That's why we here.
Quite a
That's why we
game.
here.
Let's do it. How about those Celtics? Last night did not disappoint. 24 lead changes, including 10 in the fourth, as LeBron James tied his career high with his 7th triple-double of the season. But it wasn't enough. Boston outlasting Cleveland with Bill Belichick courtside. Isaiah Thomas is the first player with at least 3 30-point games versus Cleveland in a single season since both Dwayne Wade and Allen Iverson did it. That was back in the 05-06 season. The loss was Cleveland's first on the road this season when leading in the fourth. Stephen A. Smith, got a question for you. How legit a threat are the Celtics to the Cavs in the East?
Well, I think it's a legitimate threat. I think they can make things very, very interesting. I don't see a 5-game series, them getting blown away or what have you, because I think sometimes the Cleveland Cavaliers are relatively inconsistent. And what I mean by that is they'll look like gangbusters one game, and then they look like they fell asleep the next game. And Boston is just feisty. I'm still not ruling out the Washington Wizards or the Toronto Raptors, mind you, because they're legitimate threats. And again, with the Wizards being a 3 seed, you know, they got to fight with Boston, and that could zap a lot out of Boston if Boston were to win that series. I get all of that. But I guess what I'm saying is when I look at those two teams in particular, the Boston Celtics and the Washington Wizards, and I look at the way that they play and the way that they get up for the Cleveland Cavaliers, you know you're the prohibitive underdog going up against LeBron James in a playoff series if you're a team within the Eastern Conference. And unlike most other teams, with these two teams, it seems to get them going. They seem to elevate their level of play to another level. Isaiah Thomas is a bona fide, legitimate league MVP candidate. He's an absolute stud. Marcus Smart, I mean, this dude, he scares the living hell out of you when he's on the court because he's so adroit at drawing offensive fouls. Nobody, I don't know anybody in the league right now who's better than him at that. I think he's drawing more offensive fouls than the rest of his entire team. Avery Bradley is one of the best defenders in basketball when healthy on that basketball court. He's just a special defender. And I can't say enough about Brad Stevens and how he could coach. Max, I'm willing to go as far as to say this. I believe two things. Number one, this would be a 7-game series potentially if they faced each other in a conference finals. Obviously, I'm still going to favor Cleveland, but I think it would be a 7-game series, A. And B, Max, I'd go as far as to question whether or not Kevin Durant was right in going to Golden State instead of Boston because of what I'm seeing in that regard. Go ahead.
Well, first, just quickly about Durant, I thought Boston was a great spot for Kevin Durant. Yeah. It's too bad he didn't go there. And had he gone to Boston, in fact, they may be the favorites over the Cavs right now. But the fact is he didn't go to Boston, and consequently, Boston is not a threat to the Cavs in the East, barring catastrophic injury, of course, to a pivotal player on the Cavs, especially, obviously, LeBron James. But they're not, in fact. They're a player away. And that player, Kevin Durant would have been really nice, Paul George, Gordon Hayward, Jimmy Butler, someone like that. It's not just that they're a player away and it has to be a nice rotation piece. They're a star player away. Let's look at what just happened last night in a terrific game. And by the way, let me just say, I like the fact that the Eastern Conference is chippy again. Not just good at the top with those 4 teams, Toronto, obviously, and Washington and Boston and Cleveland, but chippy. You know, it's more physical, it looks like, than the West, like it used to be. That's fun to see. That's the character of the conference. It always has been. But when you look at what happened yesterday, Boston health and wealth, Stephen A.
Thank you.
Boston playing at home, Cavs on the road. Cavs without Kevin Love, without J.R. Smith, trying to integrate a brand new piece in Darren Williams, who, by the way, takes the last shot. Should he have taken the shot? I mean, yes, but still, maybe there's a little more easy integration there in terms of the way they play. With all those factors working against the Cavs, it was an amazing game, came down to the wire, and the Celtics barely won. The Celtics.